Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't see it as a threat at all. I actually see it as a really positive thing for the industry, and I know people were a bit shocked by it and confused and like, what does this mean? But for me, as someone who has a lifelong belief in the value of creativity as a tool for business, I think that was the fact that Accenture bought Droga 5 in means that Droga 5 now has access to the C-suite level of executives in a way that none of us have ever had before, which is fantastic for the industry because I know what Droga does is they understand creativity, and now Accenture is going to bring them into the boardroom, not just at the CMO level, at the CEO and CTO, and I think that's great for the whole industry. So I think it's a bit shocking for people, but at the end, when it all sort of finishes up, I think it will be better for our industry to have access to that level within our clients. I think it'll be good. Yeah, it's funny because I always sort of have this approach of I think the regulations and the rules kind of force you to find different and surprising creative solutions. So I quite like that because I think when it's too easy, you don't try as hard. So it's definitely challenging, and there are parts of communication in the health space which are more difficult than others. I think doing the classic 60-second TV commercial, obviously that's hugely regulated, and that's a good thing, and that's important for patients, etc. But there are so many. The thing that I like is that kind of forces brands to think of other apertures and how else can I do this where it's not as heavily regulated, which could be about experiences or using voice or AI or other ways of conferences and things like that. So I think it actually helps force brands to look for other ways to advertise, and I think that's a win with consumers, particularly millennials who sort of say openly, we hate advertising. So I think the trick is to make advertising that doesn't look like advertising. Like they love brand experiences, so deliver experiences, and they don't complain about that. They just don't like traditional ads on television, and probably none of us do. So we don't want to watch Game of Thrones, but sit through a bunch of ads. I think brands are always looking for cultural relevance, and so we always sort of scan across the landscape and go, well, what's happening culturally that we can align our brands with, etc. And Game of Thrones. I've never seen so much sort of excitement around the world about the end of something, and people are just like absolutely chomping at the bit to see the final thing. So I think brands that have done things in an interesting way will definitely get that rub off from the brand. One of the things I saw just yesterday was a really great example out of Australia where the TV station built a graveyard of all the dead characters in from Game of Thrones over the last 7 years, and you can go and visit the graves and I'm like, that's a fantastic marketing stunt, and like that almost feels like content that Game of Thrones fans would be like, yes, like, and that's what I mean about do advertising that doesn't look like advertising. Clearly that's an ad, but if it's great, then you love it. So yeah. I think as long as they are promoting creativity, like, I think the challenge for me is, and Cannes is this huge kind of event that happens every year, and I feel like there's a bunch of tech clients maybe who are just there to sell themselves and don't bring value to the festival. But I've sat on the Global Creative Council for Facebook for the last 5 years, for instance, and Facebook comes with a plan to help creative people be better at engaging with customers over social media, etc. So they're kind of they are there as sort of to educate and not to sell their products, but to help us get better. And I think as long as you're doing that, I don't mind them being there. But I think if you're just there as like, oh, all the creatives are here, let's try and sell them our brand, it's like it just comes across as sort of shallow, and you're not really taking part in the festival at all. You're just there as a sales conference, you know. So I think that's why people were frustrated when, you know, those kind of brands just kind of swept in and tried to take over.